Wendell, how about a pithy intro?
I don't know, something pithy?
All right, so you guys have been awesome. We were gone last week. We had to go out and deliver a car, so I'm terribly sorry that we couldn't make it last week, out delivering those cars to community members. The person that won the car, he goes by Bunge on the forum, so if you guys see him on there, say what's up, and tell him that you're angry and jealous and all that. But I feel really good, Wendell, because he really deserved the car. We got there, and it was almost like one of those tear-jerker moments where he's just like, listen, things have been really rough for everybody. Everybody in the house it's been kind of just like a negative time period, and this has been like a positive thing that's kind of been shining a light on the family and making everybody. It's just given like a positive, I guess, energy, if you will. I'm getting a little out there with that kind of stuff, but he was just, it was a hugely positive thing. Sorry, I'm on the wrong screen. Hugely positive thing, and he really needed a car. He had a car that was just not working out, and he really needed a computer as well. So I'm extremely happy that he's the winner, and we've got that video coming up very shortly. Jimmy's been editing it like crazy. In fact, he's supposed to be editing right now. Where the hell is he? No, he's on a phone call, but he'll be out here. You'll hear some clicking in the background while he's editing that video. But yeah, it was awesome. And I wish I could do it again, but I'm almost fresh out of cars. I don't know, you got any cars I could borrow to give away?
You are completely out of cars, as a matter of fact, I think. Yeah. Well, no.
I got the new
giveawayable cars. Yeah,
giveawayable cars. I just replaced that one with an all-wheel drive car for the snow. So anyway, also, you guys, I've got some more ways that we can give back to you guys while you guys also give back to the community. So the t-shirt store has been doing really well. I've been very happy with the quality of the t-shirts. In fact, I don't think I could be happier with the quality of the t-shirts. The printing and everything they print with color-based inks. It's not like this shirt right here has the plasticky junk on it. So we use the color-based inks, and it prints into the fabric of the shirt so that it's soft to the touch and it breathes and all that nonsense. Anyway, I want some more designs. I want to greatly expand our lineup of just shirts and merch in general. So give us some ideas on what you guys would like to see in the store. And if you have t-shirt designs, submit your designs. There's going to be a link in the description right there. It'll take you over to the website. Submit some designs or even design ideas or one-liner ideas or whatever there. And if we decide to use yours, we'll send you $100. So, hey, $100, and then we'll use it over there, and then you guys can know that your shirts are being worn all over the place, and $100. So, all right. I think that's about all the announcements. Tech support's been doing really well. I need to hire like one more person pretty soon. We got Jimmy. He's taking a lot of the editing load off my shoulders. But now we've been doing so many events and that sort of thing that we should hire Albert, I believe. Maybe if Albert wants to come up here and hang out, that'd be very good. Have a camera guy, someone who can do videos, and also Albert's really good at marketing. He's got like a master's in business, so MBA. Be nice to have him around. Help me a lot, and it would help the content a lot. So thanks again for the tech support guys. It's making all this possible. Now let's get down to the big story for today that I want to talk about quite a bit. Siri's inventors, they're working on building this quote-unquote radical new AI that does anything you ask. Now, the deal with Siri is that Siri and other similar technologies like, Google Everywhere, or just the Google search that you see on Android, and then there's Cortana on the Windows phone, and there's also lots and lots of other, was it Cortana, or what did I say, Cortana? I said it backwards.
No, I don't think you really enunciated anything there.
Just
It's going to be display
something.
point all over again.
Display point. It's everyone's favorite new technology now. Everyone's waiting for display point, and I invented it right here on the show. Anyway, speaking of display point and Cortana, was that just Cortana? I'm saying that right? I don't have a Windows phone, but anyway.
I think that's right.
Yeah,
Cortana or Cortana. That you shouldn't complain too much about that, but I think you were just like. I might have misheard though. It's fine.
It's one of those things where when you don't know how something is pronounced, you're like, or if you don't know the information, like when were you born? I'm born on September 14th. It's like that's how they do it in the British Parliament. Whenever they here in like the in USA, the Congress, whenever someone asks them something and they don't want to give an answer, they just wildly lie. They were like, I was in Paris at the time, when in fact they were there shooting people. But in London...
Can you tell me what the definition of is?
Yes. Could you please define is? But yeah, in London they do that, or they just like, I was at the... Like, what was that, sir? Yes. Anyway, that's how politics works in different parts of the world. And I believe in Russia they just shoot you. So back to the story at hand. All of the current AIs that are out there are limited by what the programmers have programmed them to do. And so the inventors of Siri have decided that they want to make a deep AI that learns. So I guess what I want to do here is talk about the implications of something like that. The team is called Viv Labs, and they're just trying to find an AI that can, I'll quote something here from the article. They want to find an AI that you can just say, hey, can you book me a flight to Washington, D.C. in a seat that Shaquille O'Neal could sit in? And the AI will look at it and be like, okay, let me go figure out who Shaquille O'Neal is because he needs to sit in this seat. Okay, Shaquille O'Neal is 8 feet tall. Okay, so you need a huge seat, and you need to go to Washington, D.C. It'll book all that for you. Right now, if you were to tell that to Siri, it would know what you were talking about. And if you told Siri, hey, book me a flight to Washington, D.C., Siri will say, like, okay, I found some stuff. And then you'll have to click and do all this stuff. So they're trying to find something that's more of a personal assistant.
Would you like to use Travelocity?
Yeah, exactly. Hey, here's Travelocity's listings. What kind of an AI did you always have in mind as far as something that you would build yourself, like your own version of Jarvis or whatever?
It's all around intents. And so with artificial intelligence, it's all about context. What is the context of your request? And so when you say Shaquille O'Neal, that is an incredible example because the context of that request is like what's special about Shaquille O'Neal as it relates to flight. And it is an elaborate logical underpinning that you are able to make the leap and sort of do away with the irrelevant information about Shaquille O'Neal and say that Shaquille O'Neal and flying probably have in common not North Korea or anything like that, but that he's just very tall and that typically airlines are very cramped. But this kind of a leap for artificial intelligence is nigh impossible with the level of technology that we have today. And so that they're even attempting something so ambitious is sort of insane, but that is where things are going. And in terms of like commercialization, like in terms of companies salivating at the ability to be able to do this kind of thing, like order me this book me a flight, do this. Companies are going to fund this type of artificial intelligence because the first one that figures it out and is able to commercialize it, they're going to make that much more money. I mean, can you imagine if Amazon figured this out and you had the Amazon personal assistant and it's like, hey, Amazon, just do my stuff. Done.
The real step that they need to take, and what these guys at Viv are trying to do, is they're trying to create an AI that writes its own little mini programs and writes quick pieces of code. So whereas now the Siri and Google and all that stuff, they're all limited by the code that the code databases that they already have, or just whatever the programmers have done. Something from Viv, some of their future technology may be able to actually write a miniature little program that does whatever task you need. So that's going to be the difference here. It won't be true singularity type. Hey, this is this technology is self-aware now. It's not going to be that level. It's going to be technology that's so smart that if it cannot do something, it can figure it out by writing little programs to do certain things. It's like, okay, I need to know this answer, so let me write a little program to figure out that that solution there or solve that problem there. So, that's just the first step in all this.
There are companies out there right now that have this level of personal digital assistant. You have a situation. I think one of them is called Fancy Hands. What a great name for a company.
Wait a minute. What kind of show is this? Hold on a minute. Go ahead.
It's like, is that app restricted? No, Fancy Hands. It's fine. No, it's not. It's not good. And I can't remember the name of the other one, but there are two really popular apps and they cost a lot. It's like $100 a month. But it's a virtual personal assistant, and you can send text messages and do things like that. The only real restriction is that it's got to be a task that you can do in 15 minutes or less.
Well, you're talking about Jarvis, and what's interesting about Jarvis is that Jarvis is actually connecting you to a real person. That's the interesting thing about Jarvis.
It is, but you don't know because there's a lot of things that Jarvis does behind the scenes in terms of the engine that are things that are powered by like Wolfram Alpha and other things like that. Mostly Jarvis is handled by a person, but there are scripts that those people have access to that automate those kind of things. And so on top of that platform, this company can learn how people would use a personal digital assistant like that, and it'll shape and bridge the gap between true AI and this sort of in-between where we've got people that have to figure out the context of the requests, and then they can use software tools to execute those requests.
All right, the part I want to talk about here for just a minute is I guess the privacy. Let's talk about privacy implications in regard to Jarvis. I mean, it's probably, people don't think about it as much when they're dealing with Google and with Siri and artificial intelligence like that. You know, like Siri needs access to your email. Well, Siri's already on my phone. It's got my Apple account. Of course, Siri has access to my email and all that sort of thing. But with Jarvis, they actually have to ask you for access to your email. Like, for instance, in one of the articles I read here, on the New Yorker, or I guess New York Magazine, this person paid $99 for a month, and they were able to get their own personal assistant that was, like you said, mostly human, somewhat not human, but they had to ask for stuff like, hey, give us access to your Expedia account. Hey, give us access to your Gmail account. Hey, give us access to all these things so we can do things for them. Of course, you can elect not to, but I mean, do you think people are going to be comfortable, and do you think there's going to be any, I guess, just breach of personal privacy as far as like, people getting access to data they shouldn't have and then abusing it? I personally feel like, okay, so you hired Jarvis, and it's someone you've never met before. You don't know them. They're not a butler that lives in your house. They're not a personal assistant that follows you around and goes, yes, sir, yes, sir. Who should I text back? Okay, I'll text back Vinny and tell him to meet you for lunch tomorrow. They're not someone like that who is, with you all the time. There's someone's far away you've never met before. How comfortable are people going to be? And, are people going to give them the passwords? And if they do give them the passwords, what happens when, this is a human being sitting here. What happens when that human being is looking through their email and sees something juicy and decides to either use it or mess with it or publish it or, do something that human beings do? Because human beings are pretty terrible inventions when it comes to stuff like this.
Those are really serious things that we haven't figured out yet, and there's probably not a clear solution. I mean, in the industry, inside corporations, we haven't even figured out, the trust of employees. And, you would think that when a corporation hires an employee and they hire the employment agreement and there are all these mechanisms in place to limit access and to audit what was done and to do this, that, and the other. But for online accounts and an online presence and that sort of thing, there's not really anything. There's none of that. But imagine, I would say, put that on hold for a second and imagine a world where Facebook or Google has this technology where they already have access to a huge amount of your personal information or your calendar and your email and things like that. So they're not really getting more permission than they already had, which should be a disturbing thing in and of itself.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it that way, and they're already like looking through your emails. Last week, one of the things that we were going to talk about in tech, we almost did the tech last week, but it was like 1 a.m, and I needed to drive the next day, and I was losing. We outlined it, but sorry, guys. Anyway, one of the things we were going to talk about last week.
The lost episode of the tech.
Yeah, it's outlined. You guys can read the outline. One of the things we were going to talk about last week was, Google. They're looking at your email, obviously for AdSense purposes, but they also they used email correspondences to find some sexual predators, and they were a child. They're preying on children, so that's a very serious thing. And Google was able to find it. And then everyone started raising questions of, hey, they're looking at our email. So there's that privacy implication. And the funny thing here that Google says is that we've not violated terms of service at all. So when you think about that, and again, so far they've only, to our knowledge, used their technology of being able to look through emails to do things like catch sexual predators or to, give you advertisements for, hey, this guy's got something wrong with his butt. Let's give him some hemorrhoids advertisements. That's kind of invasive, but they do it. And there's not a lot of people making a lot of noise about this. What is it going to take for someone to say, hey, we need to reassess this, or do we need to reassess this? I mean, as we move into the future, it's only going to get crazier. And in part 2 of this episode, you're going to hear us talk about Google and a few other companies who are going to be putting some crazy satellites into orbit. By around 2018, there's going to be a whole fleet of these satellites out there and they're going to be able to recognize you. And from outer space, they're going to be able to tell who you are. So are we just going to need to get used to this kind of invasion of privacy and figure out new ways to live with the knowledge that everything we do is watched and can be traced and can be made public if they choose to? I don't know. I'm like, it's a strange time because we're in like an intermediate time. It's not the 70s where you could get away with things. It's not the 1800s where you didn't even have like to worry about fingerprints as much as you do now. It's a new time where everything has a signature and a trace and a way to link it back to you, or just there's no privacy anymore. I mean, should we just get used to that, Wendell?
Well, the problem here, the societal problem, I think, is sometimes you hear people refer to is like you look at the past with rose-colored glasses, and so it's not really, in a condescending way, you might say that it's a revisionist history, but you look at the past, like the actual past, and it is easy to forget the bad things and remember the good things. But with modern digital technology, the present is basically immutable. The present will always be accessible in a database somewhere, and you can always come back to the present and see what it's really like. I don't know. That seems like that's going to be transformative, but I don't know if that's going to be transformative in a positive or negative light. I think that there are certainly very serious negative connotations in that, to err is human, to forgive divine, but having every mistake that you have ever made basically immutable from now until the end of time, that would weigh heavily on me, or that weighs heavily on me when I think about it in that kind of a context. And that that sounds kind of lofty, but it's really not. I mean, you can't really as you get older, you sort of realize how dumb you were when you were younger, and one of the dangers of youth is that you don't really realize how dumb you are, which is a problem.
That's also a problem with stupid people, I've heard. It's like stupid people do not know that they know nothing. But smart people know that the beginning of... what philosopher said the beginning of knowledge is the knowledge that you know nothing? Was that... I don't remember who that was. I'm not smart enough to know these things because I know nothing.
But, that's a good thing. It's like that's a totally good attitude to have. And so this sort of system where everything is saved forever, there's just so many downsides that are so easy to spot. I really think, Linus Torvalds, took the GNU utilities and put something together, and then we have Linux, and that is the way that it is for operating systems. I think something like that is going to happen with artificial intelligence and a personal assistant. Someone is going to come out with the open source offline version of Wolfram Alpha. And, just in my own experiments, using Wikipedia as a fact base, like building a system that can read and understand Wikipedia, and then using that as the basis for a very rudimentary artificial intelligence, that's actually pretty effective. Wikipedia is a pretty good resource for that type of an artificial intelligence. And I think didn't they feed like 4chan to Watson or something? It wasn't 4chan, I think it was the Urban Dictionary, and then all of a sudden Watson was swearing and doing all sorts of bad things, and they were like, oh no, and they had to pause it and take the Urban Dictionary out of Watson. But the software that runs Watson, even though it's very proprietary to IBM, I mean, that would be cool. I'd like to run that on my own copy. I'd like to have a server that's crawling. This is what I have. It's not really AI, but I've got a server that crawls and pings things on the internet and looks for things for me and aggregates it for me. And because it's not online, it doesn't leave quite as much of a fingerprint as it would, being a digital service. Or if Google were running that service and Google's like, oh, he's explicitly listed his preferences here, that would be extremely commercially exploitable. Whereas when I'm doing it in my own software, it's not quite as transparent.
I mean, do you think people are actually going to? I mean, I don't know. I can't see any major companies doing that. It's going to have to be an open source thing. But I feel like an offline personal solution, or even something that's similar to the technology you see with like OwnCloud or BitTorrent Sync or whatever it's called, something with that technology, so you can run your own thing. But I mean, that's going to require a lot of space. It's going to require a decent internet connection from your house. You're going to have to run your own server. But that's the only really safe way to do it.
There's a really cool service called Why You Know Host, and it's basically push button to install these open source utilities. And we've been working for a while on a tutorial how you can take a virtual machine like that at host or Linode and set up your own secure cloud where you've got Dropbox and OwnCloud and blah blah blah. So you've got your own email and and it's all centralized and the data can't be mined, so you maintain your privacy. That we've run into some problems because the levels of encryption are just so crazy that everything doesn't really get along with everything else. But hopefully we'll have that out before too long, and that kind of thing can serve as a basis for that. But I do think it'll be important that for people that rely on personal digital assistants, that their personal digital assistant is under their own control. I mean, you can't have two masters. You can't serve two masters. It's impossible. Eventually they'll be in conflict. And so if Google has this digital agent that's working for you, even if you're paying for it, it's really not beholden to you. It's Google, or it's Jeeves, or it's Jarvis, or it's whatever.
I guess right now is a good time for me to echo what I've been telling all the other YouTubers out there, especially when we go to events and that sort of thing, and they tell me that I'm crazy for worrying about my website more than I worry about Google and Twitter and Facebook. My reply is always, why are you guys building your homes on other people's property? So it'll come to a point when you're looking at everything and you're like, wow, everything I have is on someone else's property. So
didn't Google just shut down Justin.tv to focus on Twitch?
Yeah, and then they're freaking ruining Twitch, man. We'll get into that in the second episode here when we talk about gaming. But yeah, they're messing with Twitch like crazy, and also on Watch coming up on Monday. Expect some pretty heated, angry comments from Pistol especially. So yeah, all right. You want ready to move on and talk about the potential panic internet stuff? Outages,
the internet is falling.
Like
the internet is falling.
So I guess is there need for panic? What do you think?
Yes and no. Basically, this problem has been known for a long time, and it's basically that when there are more than 512,000 routes, certain old pieces of equipment can't deal with that. And so those old pieces of equipment just lose the routes that are the difference between that. And when the internet was sort of weird and broken the other night, and the reason it was weird and broken is because certain routers that should have been upgraded a long time ago briefly had more than this number of routes. And so what happened is, like, let's say that I've got a network and I've got 65,000 IP addresses on this particular network. And if for network management reasons I needed to split that one network into 4 smaller networks that each had their own route. Well, that's what happened briefly. Just because the number of global routes are always increasing because the number of things on the internet is increasing. We're out of IPv4 addresses and blah, blah, blah. As a network administrator, I wanted to split up my block and have more distinct routes for network management purposes. The cumulative effect of that pushed that number over 512,000, and so bad things happened to the internet. Cisco's been warning us this would happen since 2009, and no one did anything, and no one upgraded their equipment, and this is the result.
I mean, even Level 3 had a ton of outages reported all over the place. I mean, Chicago was hit really hard. Kansas City was hit really hard, but it's crazy.
Level 3's been busy dealing with Verizon's shenanigans, so they've been too busy to upgrade their equipment.
Wait a minute. They've been complaining that Verizon needs to upgrade. Apparently, they need to upgrade as well. So Level 3, get on that stuff. And then after you finish doing that, yell at everybody else for not upgrading. So yeah, I just helped them solve their problems there. All right, speaking of Verizon, let's go over and talk about Comcast. Comcast. Yes, we're going to talk about Comcast yet again. What they are doing is it's borderline hilarious. So, of course, the phone call came out. Ryan from was it Ryan Block? Who was he? Was he from Engadget or whatever? But he's got his own thing now. He recorded the customer service call where the dude just would not let him leave. He was like, I don't understand why you would want to leave the best internet service provider in the whole world. You how could you leave, sir? You're crazy. That was basically it. And now there are a few new videos that are surfacing. Here's one with a dude who I guess he wanted to cancel as well, and so he calls up and he's on hold for like over 3 hours, and they left him on hold until they just all left and went home. So he calls with one phone, and he's on hold for like 3 hours, and he calls with the second phone, and their offices are closed. So they just left him on hold, and then they took off. And above and beyond that, the other thing that's kind of ridiculous is, Comcast. This is another call where Comcast does not want to refund $180 that was charged to someone who was guaranteed that a visit from Comcast would be free. And the crazy part about this visit and this call and this complaint was that the guy called and there was a problem with Comcast connection to his building. Nothing was wrong with his router, nothing was wrong with his Wi-Fi, nothing was wrong internally in his personal unit. It was a problem with the copper connecting to the building. He was charged for Wi-Fi setup. He was charged for connection problems. He was charged for all these crazy things that never actually happened. And when he called him, they were not going to refund him. They were giving him a lot of hell. And then finally, he whips out the recording of his original call to Comcast and played that back on the air. After he played that back on the air, the response was like, "Okay, sir, well, we're going to refund you," even though they told him it was impossible to refund him. They were like, "It is impossible to refund you, sir." After that happens, they're like, "Okay, we're going to refund you because you have a recording." What kind of business is this? And these guys want to swallow up Time Warner and become even bigger? I mean, AT&T was broken up for less than this.
It feels like we've been just talking about Comcast and their shenanigans for months and months and months, and we probably have. But the only reason we're going to talk about this is not for this particular incident, but because the internet has become so flooded with episodes, let's call them, of Comcast's ineptitude, ignorance, malice in some cases. It is so dysfunctional that if it were a human being, there would be a special convention from the American Medical Association to give doctors special permission to euthanize the said individual. Like, it would actually be a thing, a Hippocratic oath, you'll do no harm, and, euthanizing people's not a good thing. Everyone universally would agree that this person needs to be put out of their misery if Comcast were a person.
But yet, that's not all. Comcast, they also, they've been really, really, really pushing for this merger with Time Warner that could do terrible things if it actually goes through. Well, now they say that it's insulting to think that there's anything shady about them paying $110,000 to honor an FCC commissioner, and that FCC commissioner in question is Mignon Clyburn, and Mignon Clyburn is going to have a huge say in this merger. So it's just really interesting when you just take a step back and look at everything that's going on. Of course, this $110,000 is to sponsor a dinner to honor Mignon Clyburn. And what's interesting about this is $110,000, that's not much for Comcast, but this sends a message to me that, hey, you need to reciprocate, okay, FCC chairperson, you need to reciprocate, number one. And number two, we're just paying this for a dinner. Imagine the floodgates being truly open to you. So this is not a one-way relationship here. Go ahead.
We also have reports that they've actually rescinded the funding for this because of the media storm that has erupted. But this is not anything atypical. This is totally status quo, normal operation. And it's like, oh, people are looking at this now. Let's not do it. Imagine all the stuff that never actually makes the news. I mean, you guys probably didn't even hear about this. You're getting it from some, backwater YouTube channel, and that's just completely insane. So you can imagine the stuff that you never hear about that's going on behind closed doors. It is complete and utter insanity, and that's why we say that if Comcast were a person, they should have been put down long ago.
Okay, you mentioned, closed doors stuff. Did you know that Comcast is employing over 40 different lobbying firms? I'd like to see all the bills for those lobbying firms. I bet they're astronomical, and I bet that the bills from that are enough to wire up 2 or 3 cities for fiber. I guarantee you that the bills that they are spending on these lobbying firms could wire a few cities with fiber. Guys, we can still combat this. As an American, you hear, and I'm sure that, the American dream is a phrase that would ring in Oz or the European Union throughout the world. And when you say that, you think of this brilliant entrepreneur who's like, yeah, I'm going to build a company and I'm going to hire all these people. And I'm going to be really smart about running the company and it's going to be great, just laser focused. They work 16 hours a day and it's going to be, the most amazing business venture ever. You're thinking, the Tesla Motors, you're thinking, Elon Musk, you're thinking, that sort of entrepreneurial spirit.
and it's going to be awesome. And then you see a company like Comcast that's literally just sort of lumbering over the horizon, just rolling like an avalanche, just swallowing everything in its wake, destroying, leaving a path of destruction and chaos. And it's like, well, what would stop that? In a truly capitalistic, the American dream, that sort of fantasy that's in your head, stopping that would be as simple as, well, the company was terrible, and startup companies could compete with that and replace them, and out compete them, and a smaller, more maneuverable company could deal with it better, and blah blah blah. But the reality is that with this lobbying situation, these 40 lobbying firms, they've effectively legislated and made it the barrier impossible for small companies to enter it. I mean, clearly as a company, they're so dysfunctional that the internet is completely clogged with stories of people just being completely ripped off at every turn by Comcast, which, by the way, if they charge you for this and you have proof that they screwed up, under the Fair Credit Reporting Act, you can sue them, and you will also be entitled to punitive damages. So if this has happened to anybody in the office, there is a line of local lawyers in your area that would love to handle that case, because when you're riding on the punitive damages chuck wagon, it's party time.
There is a defense for this, guys, and it's kind of a long shot, but small municipalities setting up their own infrastructure, that's the defense for this, because there's not going to be any competition. We've already seen there's not going to be any competition between Time Warner and Verizon and Comcast. They are colluding together to make sure that they don't overlap any, so that you do not have any choice. And then they keep buying each other, and there's just a few people at the top getting rich. But when local people look at their communities and say, hey, we've got a problem here. We have terrible internet connections. They're way too expensive. The younger populations really need this because they've gone to school and they've learned all these different things, and they are trading huge files over the internet and that sort of thing for work. And let's just get right to it. Rockport, Maine, population 3,321. They decided to lay down some fiber, and this was cheap. They spent I think it was only like $60,000 to lay fiber all over their community, and they were also really, really smart. So here's the deal: a lot of times municipalities get sued by Comcast and CenturyLink and whoever else is in the area, like we saw in Provo, Utah. I believe it was Comcast and CenturyLink who sued the municipality. Municipalities are not supposed to be able to compete with businesses. So what this area did was they decided to lay down all the fiber. So there's dark fiber in the ground already ready to go. And they said, hey, local businesses, who wants to do this? We'll help you out. And so, of course, some local businesses showed up, and now they're offering fiber to businesses in the area and pretty much anybody in the area for $70 a month. That's it, $70 a month. Now, Time Warner in that area is $70 a month as well, and it's 200 times slower. Here's the big problem that they're solving here. A lot of times, people in that area, they're going there, they're growing up, going to high school, possibly going to like a very small local college, and then they're getting the hell out of there because there's nothing for them. There's no work, there's no internet infrastructure. But by doing this, they're going to be keeping a lot of the younger generations there, because it is a beautiful, part of the world. It's a nice, tranquil part of the world. It's life is slow, food is good, that sort of thing. Nice lobster all the time. Hey, it's Maine. Well, at least in season and all that. But and I have no idea when the season is because I don't eat a lot of lobster. But you guys get the idea. It's a cool place to live. But now it's going to be a lot more attractive, and a lot of the people who grew up there are going to maybe think about staying there. That's what we need all over the country. We need Chattanooga. We need the freaking lawmakers to get the hell out of the way. We need places like Rockport, small communities. I mean, 3,300 people or whatever, and they're already laying down fiber. We need small communities to take a look at this, and then get out there and realize that this is what will make their community ready for the next 100 years or whatever. End of rant. I don't know.
It is true. I mean, fiber optic is the only real option here, and actually these ISPs are scared to death of this, and so part of what those lobbying firms are charged with is making it nigh impossible for communities to do this on their own. And when they have, when communities have done this on their own, and ISPs have been successful in undermining that, the way that they have undermined it is to make sure that that network does not have internet access. I mean, almost sitting behind their desk, twirling their mustaches, they're saying, "Why would you want to stream television from the internet when you have cable television?" It's like, I would punch you.
Oh man, you ready to record the second half of this? I think you guys are going to be ready to watch the second half of this, but we're gonna go record that right now. Again, thanks to everybody who's been grabbing up the t-shirts in the store. We hope you like the quality. I actually went in and lowered the price for the shipping for overseas. And you know, the guy in the warehouse called me and he was like, "Dude, you're taking a beating on some of this shipping." So while we're like breaking even shipping it to like London or something, if someone from like Australia orders, we're actually taking a beating. If someone from like Namibia orders, it's going to hurt us. But he did the math and he's like, "Listen, we shipped out 80 orders this week, and you lost $25 on the shipping." And, we make a few bucks on each shirt. So I'm like, you know what? Let's just keep the shipping lower for overseas, because I realize there's a lot of you guys out there overseas that watch us. I have no idea why we talk about too much, too many American things, too much American nonsense. But I feel like a lot of it ripples over and affects you guys.
We are paying attention to the other countries, we promise.
Yeah. We love the other countries, and I want to get out there and hang out with you guys some more. So you may see some more of that in the future as well. Getting out there and hanging out with people in different cultures and customs and countries and that sort of things, other things that start with C. So yeah, thanks again for that. And thanks again to the tech support guys. You guys are making all this possible, and you guys are making it so we don't have to do too many advertisements, unlike other YouTubers out there that do advertisements every 10 seconds. Did I just fire some shots? I think I just fired some shots.
Shots fired. Shots fired.
Are we supposed to do a Squarespace advertisement?
Oh yeah, we can.
Yeah, so there's a Squarespace advertisement that's going to be inserted into this one, but yeah, I still think we don't do it as much as
Thank you,
the rest
Squarespace.
of them. Yeah.
No, we don't. We really don't.
It's because of the tech support, and it's because it's because I can't stand it. That's why. I mean, if you really get down to it.
We take very few ads. We get a lot more offers for ads. But we try to turn them down, and we try to rely on tech support, and we try not to grow too fast. Like, we actually have a growth strategy. We're paying taxes, and we're set up properly and all that kind of stuff, so it's kind of a miracle.
It is, especially if you knew me before this. It's like, what the hell, this guy? That's this guy, right? Well, at least I'm not wearing.
We have a business plan. It's a thing.
It's on napkins, but hey. Anyway, I think there's some beer stains on there.
They're really high quality napkins.
Yeah, they're like embroidered napkins. 5-star. I don't even know what's happening anymore. Oh, guys, I'll see you guys in the next episode.